So these same Babylonian goldsmiths that teach and push the graven image, they still have the same representation here in modern times in 2017. Your teacher that teaches you this graven image Calvary Messiah is a teacher of Babylon and not of the Most High. I know you love this. I know you know it's the truth. Vengeance and patriotism have been left far behind. And the question is the contrast between the Hebrew concept of the Creator and the Mesopotamian notion of an image. Vengeance and patriotism have been left far behind. And the question is the contrast between the Hebrew concept of the Creator and the Mesopotamian notion of an image. Today's date is December 27, 2017. This is Yalak, and this is another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series titled Jacob is the Former. And the lesson is number 117. Now, Jacob is the former. I'm going to read from Jeremiah chapter 51. Of course, we know that deals with the destruction of Babylon. And we know it was dealing with Babylon that was back then. But it seems to be speaking of how Babylon is set up in the future as well. Because everything is based off of the first Babylon. Now I'm going to read from the New Oxford Annotated Bible, Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 12 to 19. Look at what it says here. Raise a standard against the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Post sentinels. Prepare the ambushes. For the Most High has both planned and done what he spoke concerning the inhabitants of Babylon. You who live by mighty waters, rich in treasures, your end has come. The thread of your life is cut. The Most High of hosts has sworn by himself, surely I will fill you with troops like a swarm of locusts, and they shall raise a shout of victory over you. It is he who made the earth by his power, who established the world by his wisdom. It is he who made the earth by his power, who established the world by his wisdom, and by his understanding stretched out the heavens. When he utters his voice, there is a tumult of waters in the heavens, and he makes the mist to rise from the ends of the earth. He makes lightnings for the rain, and he brings out the wind from his storehouses. Everyone is stupid and without knowledge. And in the KJV, I think it says every man is brutish. Goldsmiths are all put to shame by their idols, for their images are false, and there is no breath in them. They are worthless, a work of delusion. There goes your Messiah images that the Messiah teachers have. Now they put on their websites and on their posters and so on. Goldsmiths are all put to shame by their idols, for their images are false, and there is no breath in them. They are worthless, a work of delusion. There goes your Messiah images that the Messiah teachers have. Now they put on their websites and on their posters and so on. Goldsmiths are all put to shame by their idols, for their images are false, and there is no breath in them. They are worthless, a work of delusion. There goes your Messiah images that the Messiah teachers have. Now they put on their websites and on their posters and so on. At the time of their punishment they shall perish. Not like these is the Most High, the portion of Jacob, for he is the one who formed all things, and Israel is the tribe of his inheritance. The Most High of power is his name. From the King James Version, I'll read verse 19 again. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. Now this here is telling us that the Most High, He was the one who made the earth by His power, even though the New Testament is telling you in places like John chapter 1 that this Messiah from Calvary did it. But this here is saying He's the one who made earth by His power. And the scriptures teach that He swears by Himself. He established the world by His wisdom, and by His understanding stretched out the heavens. By His understanding stretched out the heavens. Not by His Son's understanding did He stretch out the heavens, or the heavens were not stretched out by the understanding that His Son has, because His Son supposedly understood or got understanding or wisdom from His Father, and then used that understanding to stretch out the heavens. No, the stretching of the heavens was done by the so-called Father. The doing of it was performed by the Creator Himself, not by a supposed Son that He made after, or that He made before all these things were done. He did it Himself. No wonder it says in verse 17, everyone is brutish or stupid and without knowledge. Goldsmiths are all put to shame by their idols. Their images are false. Now, when you deal with images being false, if you take a look at images, you'll understand that when people use images in worship, the images represent the spirits or the gods that they worship, or the angels they worship, or the saints that they worship. So when you see saints, that is a god that the image of the saint represents. So a man who served as, let's say, some dignitary in a religion, whatever religion, when that man dies, they make him a saint, and he is worshipped as a god, but he may also be worshipped as representative of a god that was worshipped before that man was even born, and they use his image in place of the god that was conceptualized in people's minds in that religion, for who there was no time on earth, because such a god never lived but was just a concept in the mind. So they now give it something close to being human in order to attach some realness to it by using a dead person who served in a particular country, served a king or so, or served in a religion. They use the figure or the image of that dead person to represent the God concept that they had, and let's just call that God A, for example, and another God B, and so on. They might use that particular dead man who served, now called saint, to represent God A that was conceptualized in their mind from probably ancient times. And this dead saint is now God A. But the public may or may not be aware that this dead saint, called by the regular name that he had when he was living, they may not be aware that he represents God A. But sometimes they may be aware. And it's not necessary to make the public aware, to make the rest of the people in the religion aware of everything, because you're supposed to remain stupid, or you'll figure out that this is all a deception, this is all a trick. Which is why the Most High says here through Jeremiah, everyone is brutish, or everyone is stupid and without knowledge. So goldsmiths are all put to shame by their idols, he's saying, when he gets up to judge now, because he's going to destroy what Babylon has done. So now, what the goldsmith now, he beats his tools and so on. He's making tools, and he's using the tools to make other tools and to make idols. So he's fashioning and he's putting together another idol that can be used to deceive the people, to pull more people away from the Creator, so that you do not know the Creator. And when you do not know the Creator, then according to verse 17, you are stupid and without knowledge. You do not have the wisdom of the Torah of the Most High. Now, the goldsmith is beating and he's burning things, and he's melting the gold and so on, and he's shaping it and forming it the way he wants. That is now like the images that you see people have of the Messiah, and some of them say, oh, he was black, he wasn't white. So they are similar to the goldsmith. Just like when you say the Bible talks about sword, and today it might be the gun. Well, when the goldsmith was making a real physical golden idol that you can pick up, it is now like a physical photograph that you can print out of your printer. That's like the goldsmith did that. But when you make an image or make a website of this white or black Messiah from Calvary, you are just like the goldsmith. So like the sword, you think of it as a gun. The goldsmith back then making the idol is like the person in front of the computer, or the computer user, or the pastor, or the religious teacher or moray or so, that is using an image printed on paper or on their website, right? And you can print it out on paper, and you can pick it up just like someone could pick up the golden image of an idol, or idol carved out of wood or out of tree stump. That's why the Bible talks about their groves and their gardens, because they would chop down trees and use a little part of the tree stump to shape out an idol, and people would go there and worship and bow before it, bring gifts and so on, and put flowers and put their money there, or whatever they put there, and basically leave their soul there. So just like the goldsmith would then move the idol to the next spot now, from where he made it to wherever it's going to be, you move the printed paper of your white or black Messiah, if you're a black person learning the Torah or whatever you're learning, you move the physical printed image of the black Messiah off your printer to your poster or your wall or wherever you're putting it. And you bring it in your car or wherever, right? Or put it in whatever room of your house or wherever you are teaching. It's the same thing as a goldsmith. The same thing. So when your teacher is telling you to worship this Calvary Messiah, that teacher is exactly who is in Jeremiah chapter 51 being cursed and exposed in Babylon. And you notice it's talking about Babylon, but you always think of this present day Babylon as well, that sometimes we call Babylon 2.0. It's showing you here that the same kind of teachers who teach with a graven image are still in present day Babylon 2.0 today. They don't necessarily ride horses with chariots on them and so on like they did in ancient times, but they might have a nice Lexus that they got from all your money that you gave them for teaching Calvary to you. They might drive a nice car, and they've got fancy cell phones, and we now have the internet in these days and so on. So they look modern, but it's still the operation of Babylon. So these same Babylonian goldsmiths that teach and push the graven image, they still have the same representation here in modern times in 2017. Your teacher that teaches you this graven image Calvary Messiah is a teacher of Babylon and not of the Most High. I know you love this. I know you know it's the truth. But some of you just go on to hate it, but we all know what time it is, that this is the truth. Look here now, I'll read from this commentary. I read this a lot. Interpreter's 1 volume commentary of the Bible. And I'm going to read about Jeremiah 51. And they're talking about verse 11 to 14. Basically verse 11 to 19. The siege of Babylon. This is another oracle from the period of Babylonian decline. The first threat to the Medes of the northeast presented the first threat to the Babylonian Empire and became part of the Medo-Persian coalition headed by Cyrus, which was eventually to bring Babylon down. Then they take a look at verse 15 to 19 that talks about the creator. Here is a very different type of production. These verses are quoted from chapter 10, verse 12 to 16, but in this context, they have a particular significance. vengeance and patriotism have been left far behind. And the question is the contrast between the Hebrew concept of the Creator and the Mesopotamian notion of an image. Vengeance and patriotism have been left far behind. And the question is the contrast between the Hebrew concept of the Creator and the Mesopotamian notion of an image. Contrast between the Hebrew concept of the Creator and the Mesopotamian notion of an image. And the Mesopotamian notion of an image. So there is some kind of a war between what the Hebrews thought of the Most High or of the Creator and the image that was promulgated in Mesopotamia in the Babylonian system. So what we see there is that back at that time, Jeremiah was exposing that there was an image God or an image movement, an image religion, might I say, that was coming up against the Hebrew concept of the Creator. An image was being circulated and put into the mind of people, and even Hebrews were being threatened by this. An image was being circulated and put into the mind of people, and even Hebrews were being threatened by this. But the Most High had spoken against image enough in the scriptures, and the Hebrews knew this. Yet we have Hebrews today who are strongly teaching from state to state, from city to city, and country to country, thereby making it nationally and internationally. They are teaching about a Messiah who is a God who they say is Elohim, and saying this is his image and this is what he would have looked like. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, so I gotta be fair to them, that they're saying this particular image is him himself, but I think they're more trying to say this is what he would have looked like, something like this, because he would have been a Negro, a black man. But as we can see here, this is Babylonian, because this Babylonian image was coming up back in the day against the concept of the Most High that the Hebrews had. Just like in ancient times, there wasn't really war against black and white. It was more against culture or your God, stuff like that, or a war about your land, who has the rights to this land and so on, because people just want to steal it. But now in our times, we have this black-white war and racism and so on, right? Well, it's like in that time, there was this religious war, might I say, between the whole idea of a God represented by just an image who was not real. It's just an image that a goldsmith made, or today that somebody in front of a printer printed. There was a fight between that image religion and the Most High who made the heaven and the earth, and who showed himself to be real in the things that he did by taking down nations and so on and whatever, and even sending his people into captivity when they disobeyed, following his instructions. Things which have been verified by many people. You know, when you look at artifacts that were found in steles and so on, you see all these different, nations that were leaving these records behind, and archaeological finds and so on. But we've got this image that is a problem. So if the goldsmith made an image from something that did not exist, then out of his mind he is making something that is not real, but gives you an image, because people can only go so far without trying to connect physically with something around them. You can't even be told the deception about many planets, outer space, and another galaxy, and so on, without other people trying to use science and technology to create a ship to try to go outer space to go and prove that planet exists, and say we sent rovers here and so on and so forth. Because at some point, people are going to say, put up or shut up. prove that that planet exists. Oh, well, we just did. We landed something on Mars, for example. That don't prove anything to me, because I can't tell where your rovers are, that it is on this place called Mars. If I can't set my foot on Mars, take a trip there and go there myself to look down and see your rover and then look behind me and see Earth back there where I left it, you haven't proven anything. You have an elaborate setup, but you have not proved it to me. Now, if we look at Deuteronomy chapter 4, hear what it says. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 12 to 16. And the Most High spake unto you out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only ye heard a voice. Similitude here means, from the dictionary, the quality or state of being similar to something, a person or thing, resembling someone or something else. So, you didn't see anything that you could come away saying, I can draw or print a picture of what the Creator looks like. So, if you have some kind of image that you printed from your printer, from your goldsmith, right, who sits in front of his computer and he prints that image, he's doing work like the goldsmith to print up something that he never saw. And he said, this is Black Jesus. And the person who made the image of Black Jesus that you use on your website or that you print, that person did more work like the goldsmith, because you just copied it and used it, but they had to sit down and design the image, create the image. Just like a goldsmith, they created Black Jesus for you, or White Jesus if you're into that kind of freaky stuff. Verse 13, and he declared unto you his covenant which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And the Most High commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. That means you can't live the same way that you were living where you were before, or living the way that you saw the others living who were in the land you're coming out of. That means you're going to be different. And so it's a similar thing with Babylon. If you see Babylon spreading out pictures of Jesus, even though you say he's black, and they painted a white picture of him in times of Renaissance and so on, and they gave you the white image, but you want to take it back, so you've gotten foolishly into their picture war or the image war from ancient Babylon, and now you're expressing your own level of fighting in this Babylon 2.0. You're just caught up in the same madness of the religious war. By being on the wrong side, you hit them back with a black picture because they have a white picture that they painted from a Jesus they never saw. That was white. And you say, well, if he was Hebrew, he had to be black, so I'm going to just paint or print a black picture. Instead of going back to the real Hebrew concept of the Most High. He said no similitude. Verse 16, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness male or female. So he's saying you are corrupting yourself. So all those people teaching you about a white or a black Messiah, they are corrupt. They are corrupt. Even if you're saying you are Hebrew Israelite, you are corrupt if you're teaching these things. And also if you are believing these things, you are corrupt. Make you a graven image. So that's like with the goldsmith who was doing that. But I've pointed out to you many times before, the printer, just like the goldsmith will beat the metal to make the image, it's the same way that the printer that you bought is striking with a hammer, with those old dot matrix type printer, and you remember like the hammer from the old time printers as well. Typewriters and so on. And it's the same way now that the printer, these modern printers, they are still hammering a picture onto your paper, even if it's laser, because they're hammering or shooting and spraying out or hitting the ink onto the paper to make an impression on the paper. So that old-time goldsmith Might have worked harder, but now you have just automated the process with a modern printer, even if it's a laser printer. You're doing the same thing. They were just in first time Babylon. You are now in modern time Babylon. But you are making images as well for your religious savior, who you say is Elohim. But you're saying it because you are corrupt. So don't make any kind of graven image a similitude of any figure. He's trying to tell you any day because he wants you to know it's just not allowed. It don't matter what you think of. It's not allowed. So don't say, well, okay, is this one allowed? Is that one? No, he just says any. That means don't even bother ask. It's just not of male or female. And it's interesting that these people teaching about black Messiah, black Jesus, and black every kind of name that they make up for him, it just turns out that he is a male. And wouldn't you be shocked to look for the female Messiah, the female Jesus? Go look it up yourself and don't let me bother to do that lesson for you. But they make this figure and they law, and they yell at you and they teach and they're bad with the law. They can quote 15 scriptures every minute if they wanted to teach their lessons. And the book of law is telling them very clearly, don't make this kind of graven image. And while they're teaching you the law and showing you how low down you are, the picture of black Jesus is right behind them. Can you see something is wrong here? That people who say they love God don't love God. They love teaching about him because he brings success. The knowledge of him brings success and brings money and brings fame and so on. Notoriety. And some people are just bored, so they just do stuff. They love attention. I do this, I get attention, I get followers, I make friends out of it and so on. But how can you teach the Torah when the picture of the image of Babylon's savior is right behind you, right on your table, right on your website, or right beside you, and right in your car, and on your poster, and so on? How? Because you are corrupt. You are a corrupt teacher. That's what Jeremiah 31 says, I will give them pastors after my own heart. Because they don't got those kind of pastors today in 2017 or 2010 or 2000 or 1990. So the Most High says in the future, I will have to fix that. Now, the scripture here, as I read in Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 19, the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things. Jacob is the former of all things, because this new threat from this Babylonian system that comes up pushing this image to take you away from the Most High, from the Creator, is a new thing. But Jacob is the former of all things, because he has been divinely created to be set apart by the Creator, and he knew no image. Jacob didn't know the image because Jacob didn't know Isa or Jesus or Jesus or any name you want to call him by. Jacob is the former of all things because Jacob is original expression of what the Most High is trying to do on the earth. Jacob is former. In other words, he is original truth bringer. Original truth representer. Now look at Isaiah 43 verse 12. I have declared. Notice? No, we have declared, because he didn't have any son to declare anything. I have declared and have saved. And you see, and he says, and have saved. Yeah, because he saved these people many times from these other nations back then. Jesus never showed up and did that. This black Messiah never showed up and did that. But I have declared and have saved, and I have showed, when there was no strange God among you. Therefore ye are my witnesses, saith the Most High, that I am the Most High, that I am the Creator, that I am Elohim. when there was no strange God, right? Why? Because Jacob is the former. He got the instructions about that which was ancient. He got the instructions, the revelations of ancient truth. So Jacob is former in that sense, meaning that Jacob carries ancient truth. He represents ancient truth. And he had that information in him, in his mind, when there was no strange God among the people of the seed of Jacob. So the new image is really new because it represents a new thought in the mind of the children of Jacob that they should worship this black image, this black Jesus. But Jacob really is former and he is different, right? Because he was made to divinely, intentionally made to be set apart. He is former. That's why Micah chapter 4 and Isaiah 2 verse 2 and 3 is saying stuff like the other nations are going to come up. Say, let us go up to the God of the house of Jacob. Why? Because Jacob is former. He had it before. But the other nations are going to get it later. So the other nations have the newer stuff, the images of Babylon floating all over the earth. But Jacob has the former truth. So Jacob is the one who can claim original truth of the Torah and of the Most High. Jacob is former, and other nations are going to come up to Jerusalem to learn it later on. Look here now at Numbers chapter 23 and verse 9. I really like this verse. For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. Israel is so different, being former with their truth of the Most High, their Torah and their revelation of the Most High, that they just look different, like a different people on the earth. The way they think about the Creator, the way they think about the earth, the way they think about truth, what they represent, because ye are my witnesses, as I just read from Isaiah. They dwell alone. They're different. How they dwell alone? I just told you the other nations are going to later say, let us go up to the house of the God of Jacob. Why? Because these people dwell alone and the Most High scattered them, but then he's going to restore them so that they dwell alone again. And the other nations who were not former, because they didn't have former truth, are going to go and learn former, initial, original, divine truth from these people who dwell alone. They are not reckoned among the nations, but the other nations who are on the other parts of the earth are going to have to travel and go to learn from Jacob, where Jacob dwells alone, like Numbers chapter 23 verse 9 is saying. Jacob is different, and he's not reckoned among the nations, which is why Babylon had to threaten Israel so much, because they were trying to bring in a new concept linked to an image to take down the no similitude Torah knowledge that Israel had. And Babylon was coming up against that. And you still got people today teaching it's the truth, it's just that it's black Jesus. Here is his image. Even though that goes against the scripture that says Jacob is former, and that according to Numbers 23 verse 9, these people are different and are not reckoned among the nations. They are so different, yet they have the same God as the other nations. And your scriptures, you tell me, talks about the Elohim of Jacob or the Elohim of the house of Israel. They got a different Elohim than the nations serve with their images. They might use the image of a white Jesus. They might use the image now, well, they're trying to use some olive Jesus because they don't want to admit that the Hebrews were black. But they got image of yin yang, image of swastika, image of whatever other sign they got out there. All kinds of these images, because they deal with images and images of saints and images of angels and images of Anunnaki, all kinds of stuff, right? Because that's what the nations do. But Israel is not reckoned among the nations. Israel is different because Jacob is former. And he learned the truth when there was no strange God in his midst. this Calvary Messiah linked to an image that you can print off, when the Most High says, do not have any image of even male or female. Don't have it. But people today are telling you, wake up, you're an Israelite, and here is the image of your Savior. Does that not sound deceptive to you? Of course it Torah does.